This might just be the coolest watch of 2025. So collaboration watches, they're becoming a new thing now. They're a whole thing. Obviously, we had the Moon Swatch, you know, Omega Swatch, and that was a massive success. And since then, we've had other brands do it. You know, Swatch has done it again with Blancpain. We've even had the Phase Studio Underdog, the gimlet that were released earlier this year. I even bought one of those myself. And I said in that video when I reviewed the gimlet that brands were going to start collaborating left, right, and center. And that's exactly what we have here. We have two micro brands that have collaborated to do something pretty cool, I must admit. Now, what I will say is I'm a fan of both of these brands, okay? I've bought watches from both of these brands with my own money. I'm actually wearing one right now. So, you know, there might be a little bit of bias here, but because I'm a fan of these brands, but I do genuinely think once you see this watch, you'll probably think it's one of the coolest watches of the year. When collaboration watches are done right, I think they're amazing. I don't think there's much that can compete with them. And that's because, listen, we're watch collectors. We don't buy watches because they make sense. We buy watches because they're cool to have in a collection. Now, both of these micro brands come from Singapore. One of the micro brands is Vario, the other is RZE. I'm currently wearing my RZE UTD 8000. This is a digital watch that RZE released this year. It is an incredible watch. Genuinely, I adore this watch. Since I've got it, I've basically not taken it off. And for the price point, full titanium, 200 meter sapphire, you know, it gives G-Shock a serious run for the money. Vario, on the other hand, are a brand that is more design focused. Their watch is still the good value for money. You know, they're clearly an enthusiast watch brand, but unlike RZE, which are like proper out and out tool watches, Vario's more so about the design, about the style, and Vario for sure are more vintage inspired, where RZE are a more contemporary watch brand. So I think it's quite a unique collaboration, because on one side we've got a vintage inspired brand that's all about design, and on the other side we've got a contemporary, you know, tool watch brand almost. So how are these two styles going to mix together? Well, we actually have the watch right here, so we're gonna have a look. Now listen, I don't usually talk about the packaging with a watch, because most of the time I just put it in the drawer over there and just forget about it because it's a cardboard box. But this watch comes in something different, something slightly unusual, and I think a lot of people are actually going to enjoy the packaging on this one. So this one comes inside of a Toyo toolbox. If you don't know who Toyo are, they're a Japanese manufacturer. They make toolboxes. I believe they make other products too. And these are like popular items. These are sought after by collectors. People actually collect these boxes. And these are really heavy duty, high quality boxes that people genuinely buy to store tools inside. RZE actually shipped this watch, the UTD 8000, in one of these, and of course they've decided to ship this Vario collaboration in it too. I believe these cost like £50, maybe even £80 to buy just on their own from Toyo, so getting one in the package with this price point is pretty impressive. Now you might think, what do I need a toolbox for? Well, you can either use it to put your watch tools in, or it's actually the perfect size to put watch straps in. Oh, I forgot to mention, by the way, this watch is only on loan from RZE and Vario. It's not a keeper, unfortunately. I'd love to keep it. Now, it must have been a hard choice to decide exactly which model you want to collaborate on. You know, do you create something completely new for the collaboration, or do you take two existing models and maybe merge them together like Phase and Studio Underdog did? But I think what's interesting about this particular collaboration is it's been done like the Moon Swatch, in that the design here is completely Vario. It's Vario's design. However, the full construction of the watch feels, you know, and I'm guessing that RZE actually made this watch entirely, except the strap. This is definitely a Vario strap. So with it looks like you've got the Vario design and an RZE construction. And as mentioned, RZE is a tool watch manufacturer. Vario is more of a design first manufacturer. So I think they've actually got this the right way around. So that's a good place to start. Now, the model that they've decided to collaborate on is Vario's Trench watch. If you don't know what a trench watch is, well, basically it was the inception of mechanical wristwatches. Before World War I, wristwatches weren't really worn by men. They were seen more as a feminine accessory. But during the First World War, obviously, it didn't really make much sense to be pulling out a pocket watch during combat. It's not time efficient. It's not exactly safe to do. So what they did is they modified the pocket watch. They soldered some wired lugs onto the pocket watch, and then they ran a strap through those soldered lugs, and so you could wear the pocket watch on your wrist. And obviously that meant that you now had time right on the wrist during combat, and you wouldn't be at risk checking your pocket watch. And after World War I, it became the norm really for men to wear watches. And I've always praised Vario for having a modern interpretation of the trench watch, and I think it should be celebrated more, because without the trench watch we wouldn't have wristwatches that we have today. In terms of, you know, horological significance, the trench watch was a massive step. Now, of course, the design of these is probably the reason why they aren't as popular as other types of watches. They do have a very pocket watch look to them, and they do wear unconventionally because of those wired lugs. Now, as mentioned, I think RZE have made this watch entirely. Could be wrong about that, that's just a guess, but this case is made from Ultrahex titanium, which is RZE's proprietary titanium formula. Basically, it's grade 2 titanium and it has a hardness coating, which I believe is up to 1200 Vickers. The regular Vario Trench watch comes with an enamel dial, which is true to original in that aspect. However, they've ditched the enamel for this particular collaboration, and instead they've gone for a forged carbon dial that actually has lume within. Now, the lume experience here is impressive. I mean, it just looks so good. There's lume woven between all of that carbon fiber, and of course the indexes and hands are also lume too. Just a really cool low light experience that you don't see very often. Now, I will point out sort of the elephant in the room. The strap that this comes on is a bit weird. So this is a bun strap. Again, this is sort of from the era of the trench watch. It of course puts a piece of leather between the case back and the wrist. But yeah, I think you've got to be a certain type of person to wear a bun strap. I'll be honest with you, you know, full transparency here, you wouldn't catch me dead in a bun strap. Listen, I think they look cool and some people pull them off. I know Brad Pitt wore one in a movie once and he looked pretty cool with it, but I ain't Brad Pitt, and I think if I put this on, people would want to check my hard drive. Now, aside from the looks, I think the most unconventional part of this watch is actually the lugs. Wired lugs don't feature any spring bar, and that means you either have to pass a strap through the watch, you know, weave it through those lugs, or you have to clip on a strap. Now, this one comes with the bund, but you can remove that lower section and you can basically wear it like a leather strap. Now, this leather strap is actually screwed to those lugs, but I think where most people will wear this watch is on a NATO strap. I think on a NATO strap, this thing looks $1,000,000. I've already tried it out. It looks incredible. Now, in terms of size, it's a little bit of a smaller piece. Case diameter comes in at 37mm. Lug to lug here is 45mm. Lug width is 18mm, which, you know, I always prefer a 20. I always say that, but because you'll be wearing this on likely a NATO strap, there's no taper, so there's plenty of wrist presence there. These do wear unconventionally. They do wear a little bit bigger than the dimensions suggest, and that's just because of the nature of the flatness of the case and those wired lugs. 10mm thick, that's including a dome sapphire crystal, also including an automatic movement, so it's a pretty impressive thickness. This watch is only using a Miyota 8000 series with a sub-seconds register. Not the most premium movement by any means, but I actually quite like these Miyota 8000s. I actually appreciate the fact that you can hear the rotor spinning throughout the day. It just reminds you that, you know, the watch is alive and it requires you to move in order to power. There's actually 3 different versions of this RZE Vario collaboration coming out. Of course, the one I've got, which is the forged carbon. There is then 2 other versions. I can't remember exactly which ones, but I'll put them up on screen now. This one has been the most popular. It's been the most sought after. So if you do like this one, it's likely going to sell first. So, you know, just be aware of that. In terms of price, genuinely, I think this is super competitive. Considering it's a collaboration watch, considering the packaging, and generally just a good spec sheet, this watch comes in at £377. Each model is limited to 100 pieces each, and the yellow version is slightly less expensive. Now, I always include a flaw section, of course, in a video. Listen, I think the flaws are kind of obvious on this one. This strap is weird. You likely won't wear it on the bun strap. It's nice to look at, but you likely won't wear it. Size is unconventional, you know, 37mm case, but it sort of wears bigger. It's a weird wearing experience. The rotor, as mentioned, is loud. Titanium cases are really lightweight and it's not absorbing much of that rotor noise. And because this features a black dial with a dome sapphire, reflections, they're not amazing on this watch. You do get quite a lot of reflections on this one, especially outside in full light. Obviously, you'll find better value for money out there, you know, not by much mind, you know, with all the specs considered. I think this is a good value proposition. But more so than anything, I just think this is just a cool watch. 2 brands that make completely different styles of watches, they've collaborated to create something that is just fun, quirky, and different. There is basically no chance that anyone will ever make a watch like this again. How often can you say that? A trench watch made from titanium with a fully lumed forged carbon dial. You know, it's just something that you don't see every day. Of course, I'll leave it linked below if you want to check it out. Thank you for taking the time to watch today. I hope you liked the new sort of style, just sat down, just having a conversation. I'll catch you in the next one, guys. Bye for now.